With me today is Linda Hogan. She was inducted into the Chickasaw Nation Hall of Fame in 2007. She was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize for her novel Mean Spirit. Her other honors include a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Native Writers Circle of the Americas and an American Book Award. She lives in Oklahoma, and she has been a finalist a number of times for the Oklahoma Book Awards, and her collection of poetry, Rounding the Human Corners, is a finalist tonight. In fact, you are a finalist for both your collection of poetry and your novel, People of the Whale. Not too many people have managed to do that in 1 year. So.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't get my essays, too.
Well, we thought about it, but there was no category for that. Now, we're going to be talking about your poetry, Rounding the Human Corners, and I think you have a poem there that you would like to read and get us started.
I think I'll just read the first poem in the book, called Eucalyptus. It is the first red light of morning, and the others are praying outside with old songs, sage, and tobacco, while I have been dreaming from the deep, the ancient, taking in the red light rising between the eucalyptus trees and their fragrance. They dropped 3 seeds in the shadows, 3 deep shrines, worlds becoming. I can hold them, and the naked bark, its spare intimacy that peels back and reveals its outer layers, deeper, earlier, without effort, that beautiful undoing, the smooth newness. Some of the religious say the 5 senses are thieves, so let's say I am stolen, because my senses are all awake, and like the tree I can lose myself, layer after layer, all the way down to infinity. And that's when the world has eyes and sees. The whole world loves the unlayered human.
Very good. Now, when you were putting this collection together, there are 2 or 3 poems in here I'm going to ask you questions about.
I may need to look at them,
okay.
too.
Well, we can hand this back and forth. Did you decide on the things that you wanted included in this? Or, so you put it together and said, these are the poems I want, this is the order that I want them in?
Yes, I do. I think, in a way, a book of poems is a part of the consciousness of where a human being happens to be dwelling at the time that they're working on that particular group of poems. And for me, that's especially so. And the poems really are mostly about the human condition, human being, about indigenous knowledge and, tribal people that I've worked with from throughout the continent. And so it moves back and forth through, like water, it has tides, but yes, I'm the one that makes the decisions. And I'm a very much of a perfectionist when I write, so even when I'm doing fiction, I write it like poetry and I go over every word very carefully.
Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely got a sense of stepping very lightly back and forth between at least 2, maybe 3 or 4 worlds. Yes. When I was reading this. Yes. So I enjoyed that aspect of it very, very much. And I think the first poem I noted in here, well, it was Journey. The mouth of the river may be beautiful. What inspired you to write that one?
Well, thinking about the movement of water to the ocean, of how all things flow, everything is in constant flux, and we ourselves are a part of the ongoing creation of the world, but also everything is moving ahead of us and behind us, and so we are not always conscious of what's there. But you're right, there are levels in the book. I just came from giving a talk on where mythology meets spirit. And so in a way, there is a mythology that's in the book, a spirituality, and then just a plain old down-to-earth human being.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that is probably what made me feel like I was walking in all these different worlds. Mm-hmm. And I particularly enjoy that about this poetry, as well as the way you evoke nature. It's very much like, yes, I'm right there. I can see that river, and I can see what's happening to that eucalyptus seed. And I particularly appreciate that.
Yeah, my friends just call me nature girl.
Okay, there you go. Now, do you write poetry every day?
Right now I do. I have for most of my life, and there was a period of time when I didn't, but I'm up every morning early and I write. And sometimes I work on an essay if I really have to have an essay together because someone's expecting it. But usually I write a poem, and it's like an early morning meditation. And then I'll come back to it and work on it and revise it, and revise it, and then revise it.
Well, you know,
You probably have heard that from everyone.
Well, actually, even painters who have to resist bringing their paints when they visit their work hanging on someone's walls, because there's always something they want to change.
They want to do.
So I can certainly understand the impulse to make it absolutely perfect, to find that. And that is so important when you're doing poetry, is you've got, really, even if you're writing a whole book that's in poetic form, you still have to be so incredibly precise.
You have to find the exact right word. You can't miss it. And every one resonates with every other one in the poem and the line.
It's not just the exact description, as you said, it's got to fit into the poem as a whole. So
I wanted to give, you know, like I saw a Diego Rivera painting in a museum in San Antonio, and I never really had seen one alive before, and it gave off light. And so when I feel like a poem gives off light, when I'm reading a book of poetry, somebody else's poetry, and I find one that does that, then I know it's poetry. And so I work very hard to write poetry that just, you know, has that magic in it.
I think you've succeeded.
Well, thank you.
Particularly in this collection here. I'm going to ask I guess a technical question. Have you had a poem that you've worked on for years before you got it right, or?
I still have some.
Ah.
Yes, I have poems that were going to go in the book before this one that are still sitting around in stacks.
Well, I look forward to when you perfect them and put out another collection of poetry.
Me too. I hope it's going to be pretty soon.
So do I. Maybe I can get you to come back and talk about it.
Well, good. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thanks.
Linda Hogan has been here talking about her collection of poetry, Rounding the Human Corners, and you can find it at your library and your favorite bookstore.